How would you describe the progress that's been made on the issues contained in the resolution?
I would describe it as rather slow and patchy. I think that we don't see women as mediators and negotiators still. We don't see them represented where important decisions are being made to the extent that we were hoping 10 years ago. I think that this is still not regarded as a proper security policy issue to look at the role of women. And only 19 countries up till now have adopted national action plans. That's too bad.
Do you feel that the lack of progress has been due to a lack of political will?
Yes. I think there is a lack of political will in some quarters, and this is, of course, also a matter of balancing power and influence. And that is why it will always be controversial and difficult. So it's a struggle and a fight for the rights of women.
One of the aspects that's mentioned in the resolution is to try to see more women in decision-making positions. Clearly, in some African countries, such as Liberia and Sierra Leone, there are women in high-up positions now. Do you feel that the effect that was hoped for from having women in more decision-making positions has filtered through in changing attitudes?
Definitely. It means the whole world to have women there, like Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the president of Liberia, because the signal is very, very clear from top down that women have to be respected, that they have a role to play. And I think that the precedent this sets is extremely important. And I think you need a kind of critical mass of women to ensure that the issues that many women care for, health care, sort of equal rights in general, also child care and all these things, that this is affected and that this will change.
How important do you feel that participation of women in the military, in the armed forces, is?
It's the same thing there, and this is one of the things we have been discussing now after the terrible incidents in the eastern DRC. If only there had been maybe more women peacekeepers or women police, it would have probably also made it easier for these women to contact them, to tell about what they had been exposed to. So it means also a change on the ground that is indeed very, very important. I think many of the European countries have, for example, a higher level of awareness when it comes to gender equality and so on. I think that they can probably also provide training and help with those things to many of the troop and police contributing countries to the UN.
Some people have pointed out that the conditions before the violence occurs, dealing with the conditions in terms of increasing education or tackling poverty, are actually more important in preventing the violence against women in conflicts. Others have looked at prosecution, better judicial procedures for actually punishing those who carry out these crimes. How do you see the importance of the before and the after?
You have to do all of these things at the same time. You have to clarify that this is a crime, that this is illegal, that this is something that is a violation of human rights when these rapes happen, and that it has to stop. It means that you have to end impunity, because if the message is that you can get away with it and you leave the women in shame, but all the perpetrators all the time walk free, then of course we cannot stop this phenomenon. So you have to do that, but you also have to make sure that you work long term to change the conditions that also create wars and conflict, because I think we have to realize that the nature of modern wars have also changed. Very rarely do you have sort of two well-equipped and well-trained armies fighting over territory, respecting war rules, so to say, or conventions establishing rules for fighting wars. Today it's much more of civil unrest, failed states, and it means that victims are civilians. So a majority of the victims in modern wars are women and children. So that means that women have become sort of today's front soldiers without guns. And the war is fought on their bodies instead. This is criminal. It is not cultural. It's criminal, and it has to be dealt with as a crime. It is unfortunately a silent, efficient, and cheap tactic of war or weapon of war. And it's important to say that it is not only in Africa. We can see it also in Asia. We get reports from all over the world to our office here. They point to Nepal, what is happening to women there. They point to Colombia. We have other examples.
And that's an important point to make, because clearly you are focused on sexual violence in conflict, but it doesn't just have to be a war zone. According to some reports, this is also used as a technique to intimidate opposition groups.
Yes, we've seen it in places after elections, for example, also in Kenya and in Guinea. And this was a way to sort of punish the political opponents or opposition. And I think this was rather shocking that it happened in a country like Kenya, but it has been documented, well documented. So we cannot sort of discount this from even the risk of it appearing in a country like Liberia, which is a post-conflict country. So we have warned against this being used in election campaigns as well.
You talked about the silence of the crime. And do you think that one of the biggest problems is, well, first of all, that it's an unseen crime largely? Many crimes against humanity get a lot of coverage, but clearly this is largely unseen and uncovered. And secondly, that there's a large amount of silence about it, often by the victims, because they feel the stigma of it.
I think this is the nature of this particular crime and this human rights violation, that it leaves women stigmatized and ashamed, and impunity reigns, and that is what we of course have to change. And this is also why I think that the debate after the last incidents in the DRC actually points to a change also in the international reaction to these crimes. So the outcry and the condemnation from so many countries and different parties and governments, what have you, I think meant that we are moving in another direction now. And of course, my appointment, the fact that there is a post for a special representative working on this particular issue, gives us an opportunity to turn things around.
You said recently we have to prosecute the perpetrators, because otherwise the whole talk about ending impunity means nothing. So how does the UN move forward on prosecution and on harmonious prosecution?
Well, you see, in this case, of course, they have to work with the national governments in the DRC and in other places. They have to make sure that the government takes the full responsibility to apprehend the perpetrators and charge them with these crimes. And this time I think we should offer our help and contribution to finding the perpetrators, go after them, have a much more sort of active posture in this conflict in the DRC. And also mobilize the full attention and the full activity from the government. I'm also hopeful that the ICC in The Hague now will bring up important principal cases.
In terms of punishment, are you worried that there may end up being a kind of mixed message on this?
Well, this is the situation today. This is how it has worked until now. Almost nobody has been caught or sort of brought to justice for this type of crime. So I'm hopeful that we will turn this around and that we will go after the perpetrators this time. And I think it's important that you show the whole line of command, that there is a command responsibility, but also that not only foot soldiers in that case are sort of caught or put to jail, but also colonels or the whole range of commanders. And I actually believe that the system of these signals is so strong that the minute you start to make clear that it is unacceptable and that it will be punished both in the military justice and in sort of civil society and in the justice system in every country, that minute we will also start to be able to end impunity.
And that's about deterrence. Do you think there's also a role for the UN in helping the victims recover from this experience?
Of course there is an important role to help the victims, and again to speak about it openly, to tell everybody that they are not to feel ashamed, that they should not be sort of victimized forever. Women are also the most important agents for change in their countries. And they do have a very important role to play in their communities and their societies. And I think we will also try to clarify or to explain that there is a so much higher cost for society when this is done to so many women. The cost for economic and social development in these countries, it will take so much longer, as has been proven in Liberia, for example.
Okay, final question. Having read again the UNSCR 1325, how would you rewrite the resolution today if you had to?
I think we don't have to rewrite that much. I think we should implement what is the basic idea in 1325 to make sure that women are counted on, that women are being given a voice, that they are represented, that they are around the table, that they are appointed as mediators and negotiators, that they are counted as an agent for change and for peace. And without women, you cannot have security. Without women's security, you cannot build any security.